Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Shanna Fold.
And I'm Yochanan El Rome.
In our top story, this week there were two separate terror attacks against innocent Israeli citizens. A woman named Batsheva Nigri was killed, and a man, Aryeh Gottlieb, who'd stopped to give her a ride, was seriously wounded near the city of Hebron. A terrorist shot at the two while they were driving. The dead woman was a mother of 3 and a kindergarten teacher. The man was taken to the hospital in serious condition. The woman's 12-year-old daughter was also in the vehicle, but was not harmed. The Arab gunman fired 22 bullets at the Israelis. In another terrorist attack 2 days earlier, a 60-year-old father and his 29-year-old son were killed after entering an Arab village to get their car repaired. The men were both shot in the head. Shai Nigerker was apparently a regular visitor to the Palestinian city of Huwara and was friends with his Arab neighbors for years, without any problems. Transportation Minister Miri Regev suggests that a bypass road is the answer to this issue, as Jews risk death when traveling around or through the Palestinian city of Huwara.
Twitter, now known as X, is using a new verification process designed by an Israeli firm to help prevent online identity fraud. Twitter will now require people to submit a selfie along with a government-verified ID to maintain their authorized status. This change is meant to enhance security and prevent impersonation. The Israeli company Authentics created software which is designed to combat scammers who are taking advantage of the previous verification process in order to carry out illegal phishing attacks on innocent social media users. Now users will need to agree to store their details for up to 30 days. Authentics will also have access to this information. The move follows incidents where individuals and companies faced identity impersonation on the platform. The owner of X, Elon Musk, underwent his own ID verification earlier this month.
More than 200 Israelis and Ethiopian Jews have been rescued from conflict-ridden northern Ethiopia in a covert operation. The evacuation was carried out on August 10th and has since been proudly announced by Israel's Prime Minister's office and the Foreign Affairs Ministry. 174 Israeli citizens were rescued in this operation, as well as a number of eligible Aliyah visa holders from Gondar. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel is committed to the safety of its citizens worldwide, as the rescued individuals are en route to Israel via Addis Ababa. The operation was organized in collaboration with Karen Hayasod.
African leaders are exploring business collaborations with Israel in the area of agricultural technology. The goal is to enhance the yield of organic produce, which can be marketed domestically, and also to bolster food security. A delegation of more than 50 African leaders visited Israel to establish this partnership, aiming to create a strong connection between the two regions. The president of the African Leadership Summit and CEO of Africa-Israel Chamber of Commerce, Pastor Olusegun Olanipekun, expressed the goal of building a beneficial economic highway between Africa and Israel. The visit included a multi-day business summit in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, aiming to facilitate partnerships. The recent signing of the Abraham Accords and shared Judeo-Christian values between Israel and Africa's growing Christian community are part of what is helping to shape a new foundation between the regions.
Bernardo Arevalo, a progressive politician, has been elected as Guatemala's next president, taking 58% of the vote. He defeats former First Lady Sandra Torres. Arevalo's father, Juan Jose Arevalo, was the former president of Guatemala and actually recognized the State of Israel when it was founded in 1948. He also served as ambassador to the country. The now president of Guatemala studied at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, graduating with a bachelor's degree in sociology. Bernardo also has been active in Guatemala's foreign service and served as a minister-counselor in Israel. There is a chance, however, that Arevalo will not be allowed to assume power. The current administration is now working to suspend his party's legal status. The election outcome highlights some turmoil and complexities happening now in Guatemala's political landscape.
The United States has officially given approval for Israel to sell its Arrow 3 missile killer defense system to Germany. The Arrow 3 is designed to intercept ballistic rockets outside of the Earth's atmosphere and is part of Israel's multi-tier missile defense against threats from Iran, Hamas, and Hezbollah. The $3.5 billion deal includes the technology required to defend all of Germany from missile attacks. The Arrow 3 system was co-developed by Israel and the United States. The agreement will go into effect by the end of this year. Initial delivery is projected for 2025, with full operational capacity by 2030. The sale is considered to be a significant step forward in relations between Jerusalem and Berlin.
Israel's Prime Minister's office reaffirms its opposition to nuclear programs in the Middle East. This statement comes after an interview with Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer, who says he does not rule out a civilian Saudi nuclear program. The Prime Minister's office emphasizes that Israel has never agreed to nuclear programs in neighboring countries, and that this remains the country's policy. The statement followed discussions about Saudi Arabia potentially normalizing relations with Israel and pursuing a civilian nuclear program. Opposition leader Yair Lapid warned against Saudi uranium enrichment, noting it could endanger Israel's security and trigger an arms race in the region. Israel's security advisors are also sharing their concerns about the dangers of a Saudi civilian nuclear program, emphasizing that certain concessions in exchange for normalization should not compromise national security.
A new app called Chat with Jesus allows users to engage in conversations with various biblical figures from the Old and New Testaments online through artificial intelligence technology. Users are able to find comfort, guidance, and inspiration through interactive dialogues within the app. Characters available for chatting include Jesus, Mary, the apostles, prophets like Moses and Jonah, Hebrew kings such as David and Solomon, Adam and Eve, the patriarchs, and more. The app combines both regular speech and Bible text to give users a balanced response.
The Iron Dome missile defense system successfully intercepted an unmanned aerial vehicle, also known as a UAV, near the Eshkol Region Council in the Gaza envelope. The drone is believed to belong to Hamas and was launched from the Gaza Strip and tracked by the IDF. 2 interceptors were deployed to neutralize the UAV, which was under surveillance from its launch near Rafah in the Gaza Strip. The IDF is investigating the incident and collecting fragments of the drone to determine whether it was armed when it was sent over. Despite the interception, no threat to the residents of the Gaza envelope was identified, and no warnings were issued.
Several kosher restaurants in the Pico-Robertson district of Los Angeles were burglarized and damaged in a suspected anti-Semitic attack. The area has a high concentration of Jewish shops and institutions. The businesses were targeted on Shabbat when vandals knew they would be closed. Windows were smashed and cash registers stolen. The Los Angeles Police Department is investigating the case, which has left the Orthodox Jewish community in a state of uncertainty.
Israel's cabinet has approved a 5-year, 3.2 billion shekel, or $850 million, program for the development of East Jerusalem, focusing on infrastructure, education, employment, welfare, and the environment. The plan also includes the approval of 2,000 new housing units for Arab residents and an increase in police infrastructure and personnel in the eastern half of the city. The budget will also fund a subsection for encouraging high productivity employment and potentially support preparatory studies. The healthcare section will support hospitals and clinics in East Jerusalem.
Archaeologists excavating the Bronze Age Acropolis at Tel Shimron in northern Israel have discovered a 4,000-year-old mud brick structure that leads to a monumental archway. The massive building housing the arch is mysterious and has walls up to 4 meters thick. The arch is perfectly preserved after nearly 4 millennia and is a rare architectural feature in this region. The purpose of the arch and the building remains unknown. The site dates back to around 1,800 years before the Common Era. It may have had some religious or cult-like function. A nearby room contained 30,000 animal bones, which scientists believe were sacrifices.
Maccabi Haifa, the soccer team, has secured a spot in the third round of the European Union Champions League competition. Despite initially falling behind 1-0, Maccabi Haifa managed a comeback, with goals from two members sending the game into overtime. Two red cards for Sheriff players gave Maccabi Haifa an advantage. This win propels Maccabi Haifa toward the playoff round and a potential return to the Champions League group stages. If they don't succeed, they'll still get a chance to play in either the Europa League or the Conference League. That concludes the news portion for our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein, and we're here in our beautiful studio in Jerusalem. My guest today is Risa Levitt. She's the director of the Bible Lands Museum. Risa, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
Tell our viewers a little bit about what is the Bible Lands Museum.
The Bible Lands Museum is a fascinating museum founded by Dr. Eli Borowski and his wife Batya, based on Eli's personal collection of ancient Near Eastern art, which makes it sound very small, but it's actually a massive collection. It's focused primarily on archaeological artifacts that come from the lands that are mentioned in the Bible: Egypt, Mesopotamia, Rome, Greece, Phoenicia, etc. And it's just an incredible collection of ancient Near Eastern antiquities.
It's a beautiful place. I go there a lot, and I love the connection to the Bible, which pretty much everything has in Israel. Why was the Bible the centerpiece of the museum?
Well, you know, when you think about Israel, even today, but certainly in the ancient world, it was very much in the middle of everything, just by virtue of its geographic location. And as such, it's a cultural crossroads. So anytime a country had hegemony over the area, or people were passing through to get somewhere else, or that all-important coastal access, Israel was in the center of everything. And not just in terms of artifacts, but ideas, architecture, culture, religion. So in that way, you get a really good sense of why ancient Israel and the Bible is the way it is, by virtue of looking at who the neighbors were, so to speak.
Something that's interesting about the Bible Lands Museum is that you get a lot of Christian tourists there. I think there's more Christian tourists, when I've been there at least, than there are Jewish tourists. Why has it become such a place for Christians to come to?
I think it's a focus on archaeology, on artifacts, on really understanding the history, not so much through text, but through objects. It's very visual, it's very tangible in a sense, and that speaks to a lot of people in a very clear and direct way.
On top of the incredible displays, you actually do a lot of things to be more interactive. For example, I've gone with my kids to watch the live scenes of the Hanukkah story that are performed throughout the museum. How do you keep people engaged in those type of activities?
Well, so we have a really robust educational program for Israeli school kids, for Arab school kids, for joint programming with the two of them together, and a pretty active adult education program, so that we're constantly sharing what we're learning in the museum with the public at large.
Also, I've been to several events at the museum where you've done joint events with the Museum of the Bible or other museums around the world that showcase their things in Israel. Why is that type of cooperation so important for the museum?
Well, I mean, all cultural institutions of any worth are known for cooperation. So it's not like the high-tech world or the business world where, you know, you keep your secrets to yourselves. Museums share, by definition, share objects, share ideas, and we're all richer for that. So I think it's really important that we cooperate not just with our neighbors, the Israel Museum, the Antiquities Authority, but also with museums all over the world.
Things are found every day in Israel. If you look at the archaeological world, you're finding incredible new things. Is there ever a push to try to bring new stuff into the museum from things that are found in everyday work?
Yeah, well, that goes back to our relationship with the Antiquities Authority in Israel. So we have in the past and will continue to highlight recent finds from excavations in Israel whenever we can. But again, the bulk of our focus is on the lands surrounding Israel.
Yeah, when you do different displays, it's usually with a theme. I've been to one that was about, Egypt, one that was about gold in general. How do you pick your themes, and what are the upcoming themes?
So it's a lot of examining the collection and thinking about it in different ways and trying to think what people might find interesting. Our latest exhibition that'll open sometime in the next few weeks maybe is Hercules. And it's looking at the objects that we have in our collection related to Hercules, both Greek and Roman, but also thinking about, I say Hercules, you know exactly who I'm talking about. Why is that? How is that image so ingrained in our minds, even if you're not a specialist in Greek or Roman mythology? How has that image endured? You probably had a picture pop into your mind right away of how he looks. Why is that? So that's a little bit of what we're trying to do in this little exhibition that we're opening soon.
Risa, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
I would say if you're coming to Israel and you're planning a visit to Jerusalem, come see our museum. It's really the basis for understanding the archaeology of and history of ancient Israel. And I always say to visitors who come through the doors, the story starts with us. And I think it's really worth a visit in that sense.
Thank you, Risa, for being on the show. And thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
Up next, the return to Zion with Karen Hayesod.
Shalom and welcome to the Return to Zion with Karen Hayesod. I'm Sam Grundwerg, World Chairman of Karen Hayesod, the leading official fundraising organization for the State of Israel. Aliyah is the secret to the success of the modern State of Israel. Let's take a look at 4 different stories of people coming back home to Israel from around the world and see how they helped shape our great nation.
For 2,000 years, through some of the darkest chapters in history, the Jewish people have dreamt of returning home to the land of Israel. During the last century, this dream has become a reality. Millions of Jewish people from every corner of the earth have arrived in the land of their forefathers. They have brought to life Zechariah's prophecy, "I will return to Zion and dwell in Jerusalem." Many have landed on Israel's shores with little more than faith and hope in their hearts. But with the help of Karen Hayesod, they have built happy homes and successful lives. And some of these new arrivals have become the leaders and pioneers building the future of the Jewish state. Sofa Landver was born in Soviet Russia in 1949, just as the Cold War was taking its grip on the world. Any public display of Judaism could prove dangerous. But Landver was determined to reach the Jewish homeland and eventually arrive in Israel in 1979. She has since dedicated herself to public service, becoming a Knesset member in 1996. Landver is currently Minister of Aliyah and Integration, helping Jews across the world make their home in the Jewish state.
בשנת 79 הגעתי לכאן, נסגר מסך הברזל, אני זוכרת מה אני עברתי במדינה שלי. זה לא פשוט לעזוב בית ולהגיע למדינה ולהתחיל את הצעדים הראשונים ולהתקדם יחד עם משפחה, יחד עם חברים, ללמוד שפה. אבל כל בן אדם עובר את זה, ולפחות רק כאן הוא מרגיש זה הבית.
Michael Oren grew up in the freedom of New York, but he too felt the burning desire to return home to Israel, emigrating alone in 1979. Despite having no family in Israel, he fought as a paratrooper during the 1982 Lebanon War. Oren then built a glittering academic career, becoming one of Israel's leading thinkers, commentators, and authors. His prominence led Oren's appointment as Israel's ambassador to the United States in 2009, Israel's most important diplomat. Oren continues to guide Israel's future as a member of parliament today.
Israel is the nation state of the Jewish people. We need to band together to assist those who are the neediest, help absorb those who want to move to the state of Israel, to be repatriated to their ancestral homeland, and the integration process for them will be challenging. And today I'm immensely proud to be part of that continuing epic story of your involvement, of our involvement in making the Zionist dream not just a reality, but a shining reality.
Another Israeli ambassador to return to their country of birth is Belenish Zavadia. Zavadia was rescued from a remote village as a young child, arriving in Israel with no family, facing a strange new life all alone. Having graduated Hebrew University, she embarked on a diplomatic career. Zavadia has served the country across the world and incredibly returned to Ethiopia as Israel's ambassador in 2012.
הייתה לי הרגשה מעורבת. מצד אחד אני עוזבת את המשפחה שלי באתיופיה כי באתי לבד. ובצד שני כל הזמן אבא שלנו והמשפחה שלי, כל הדורות חלמו להגיע לארץ ישראל, למדינת ישראל, והחלום שלי הולך להתגשם. אני מכירה את קרן היסוד טוב מאוד, את העזרה שלהם, את התמיכה שלהם. הם מפעילים את אולפן הציון. משם למדתי את העברית הבסיסית. עם זה הלכתי לאוניברסיטה, עם זה עד עכשיו, זה מה שמשמש אותי. זה מה שבנה אותי.
From Russia, United States, and Ethiopia, Sofa Landver, Michael Oren, and Belenish Zavadia represent a true ingathering of the exiles, as envisaged in scriptures. Jeremiah's prophecy, "Your children will return to their borders," is happening before our eyes. And with your support, you can ensure that Keren Hayesod helps many more make the journey home to Israel, guaranteeing that the dream of 2,000 years continues.
Let's bless Israel together.
Now's the time for you to get involved. Assist Keren Hayesod to raise the necessary funds in order to bring Jews yearning for their homeland back to Israel. Your donation can help fulfill the biblical prophecy today. To donate and get information, visit our website at www.khisrael.org.
And now, shining light from Israel.
The story of David and Goliath is one that has fired the imaginations of billions of people around the world. And while reading the story in the Bible is riveting, it remains just that, a story. To gain a better understanding of what happened, you actually have to come to where the events took place. And that's what brings us here today, to Tel Azeka. These trail markers aren't just here to help us get to the top of the mountain. They're here to help us immerse ourselves into the biblical narrative. Each one is engraved with a single verse. As we walk by, they take us deeper and deeper into the drama that unfolded here thousands of years ago. This is part of an ongoing archaeological excavation of the ancient city of Azeka, which was one of the most important fortified cities in the late First Temple period. Archaeologists have already found remnants of a city wall as well as a fortress, which helps us understand what we've already learned from other archaeological finds in nearby Lachish, that Azeka wasn't some small town hamlet. Rather, it was a strategically important city that was fortified against enemy attacks. As we're climbing up, we're already getting these beautiful views behind me. We're looking towards the west, which is the land of the Philistines. And it was from that direction that the Philistine forces were coming and encroaching on Israelite territory. Between us and the next mountain is an area called Ephes Damim, which is a red line past which King Saul would never allow the Philistines to pass. I am just in awe of the beauty of this view, as well as the historical weight that it carries with it. These markers are a little bit bigger because they also serve as benches where we can sit and listen to the climax of the story. From here, we have a beautiful view of the valley where there was supposed to be a battle between the Israelites and the Philistines, but it ended up being a one-on-one showdown between David and Goliath. Let's go have a look. Behind me is the Valley of Elah. Valleys like this were used for agriculture in the biblical period, but sometimes they were also used for battles, and that's exactly what was supposed to happen between the Israelite forces and the Philistine forces. But the Philistines had their secret weapon, Goliath, a giant who was anywhere between 9 and 15 feet tall, depending on how you measure a cubit. He would come out into the valley issuing a challenge, but no one was brave enough to take up the call. Until David, who wasn't even in the army at the time, and he heard Goliath's challenge. And it made David furious. And he went down into the valley and he gathered up 5 smooth stones and faced the giant without any armor. Goliath, furious, started to run at David, at which point David took out a stone, put it into his sling, and threw it at the giant's head. Goliath fell face down. David came, took his sword, and cut Goliath's head off with his own sword. At that point, the Philistine forces were so afraid of what they had seen that they fled all the way back to their territory. Today, the valley is being used for agriculture once again, just as it was thousands of years ago. What's even more remarkable are the communities that are behind us, housing thousands and thousands of Jews returning to their biblical homeland. The story of Tel Azeka, while famous, is just one story here in the Elah Valley. There are dozens of other stories to be heard in this region of the Holy Land, not to mention everywhere else in the country. I'm going to go and explore some of those places to connect to my biblical heritage. We would love it if you would come and explore with us.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Shanna Fold.
And I'm Yochanan El Rome, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Please join us again next week for all of your Israel updates.